An analysis of George Orwell's 1984, The Victor's History. George Orwell's 1984 presents us with a dystopian version of England where totalitarian themes of government are present in almost every page. The control the government has over every aspect of Winston's life is made very clear right from the beginning, the telescreen being symbolic of this. What's most interesting is the people who are subjected to this kind of government. When it comes to the intelligence and creativity of the individual, it seems non-existent. The people believe anything the party says, no matter how obviously wrong and contradictory it may be. The people are fed propaganda, which doesn't allow them room for any of their own thoughts. We'd like to think of ourselves as better than them, better than just sheep, but are we really? What we come to understand as knowledge is amendable and is determined by whoever is in power. Only when we understand that can we begin to progress towards true knowledge. Facts are the most obvious example of the party's altering of knowledge. Dates, names, events are all controlled by the party, all produced by the party, however they see fit. Winston constantly analyzes this about the society in which he lives in, and on chapter 3 of book 1, he says, "And if all others accepted the lie which the party imposed, if all records told the same tale, then the lie passed into history and became truth. Who controls the past, ran the party slogan, controls the future. Who controls the present, controls the past. And yet the past, though of its nature alterable, never had been altered. Whatever was true now was true from everlasting to everlasting. It was quite simple. All that was needed was an unending series of victories over your own memory. Reality control, they called it. In newspeak, doublethink." There we see Winston's take on reality and who controls it. He believes that if you change the past well enough, you destroy the old one, and the new past becomes the true past, as long as everyone believes it. See, reality exists not in an outside world, but what we interpret that world as. And that is why, sometimes, 2 and 2 can make 5. Now we've seen the party alter the past, but sometimes they take it a step further and create something that was never there. At one point, while Winston was working in the Ministry of Truth, he creates a persona from thin air, one who will soon be accepted into the world and be thought of as just as real as you and I. In chapter 4 of book 1, Orwell says, "Comrade Ogilvy, who had never existed in the present, now existed in the past, and when once the act of forgery was forgotten, he would exist just as authentically and upon the same evidence as Charlemagne or Julius Caesar." Winston was working on correcting one of the party's contradictions when creating this persona, but the reason why Orwell included it in 1984 is to show just how fundamentally inaccurate we can be. In creating Comrade Ogilvy, he also questions the existence of Julius Caesar and Charlemagne. What you can argue from this is that you shouldn't believe anything you haven't experienced firsthand, but in doing so, how can you function? And in that lies the flaw. A huge part of controlling the population in 1984 includes the continuous state of warfare that Oceania has been in. The war strikes fear in the people and gives them a common enemy to unite against. The fear also makes them less likely to revolt because they believe that Big Brother is their savior from these savage East Asians or whatever else they're led to believe from the fear-mongering media outlets, kind of like America today. But we'll get back to that later. In chapter 9 of book 2 in Goldstein's manifesto, Winston reads, "The primary aim of modern warfare, in accordance with the principles of doublethink, this aim is simultaneously recognized and not recognized by the directing brains of the inner party, is to use up the products of the machine without raising the general standards of living." When analyzing the military industry portrayed to us in 1984, one cannot help but compare it to our current state. Goldstein writes about modern warfare being used to eat up wealth so that standards of living don't ameliorate. The United States has a gross problem with military spending, accounting for approximately 44% of global spending. Our budget is constantly increasing and increasing while we also scramble to pay off national debt. Is it really necessary to have this much money spent to fight who exactly? And for what reason? Weapons of mass destruction that don't exist? Are American citizens really in danger, or are we scared into believing so? Scared into believing that the Middle East is some sort of evil place that we've been justifiably invading for the past couple of decades.